I was 8 years old the first time I realized my father's hands were different from other fathers. They were rough, covered with scars, the kind of hands that looked like they had fought the world and lost more times than they had won. But to me, they were the safest place in the world. Those hands held mine when I crossed the street, fixed my broken toys, and wiped my tears when the world felt too big for a small girl like me. My father was not a man of many words. He didn't say, "I love you," often, but he said it in 1,000 other ways. In the way he woke up before sunrise to go to work, even when his body was aching. In the way he brought home little things I loved, an orange candy, a single rose, a book from a secondhand stall. He was quiet, patient, and steady, and I never knew how deeply that steadiness would shape my entire life. We lived in a small house on the edge of town. It was nothing grand, but it had laughter, the smell of my father's tea, and the warmth of his presence. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear him outside, fixing something under the dim light bulb that flickered over our porch. When I'd ask him why he never rested, he'd smile and say, "Because, sweetheart, everything worth keeping needs care, even if it's old, even if it's broken." I didn't understand it then, but I do now. He was talking about more than things. He was talking about people, about family, about love. As I grew older, I started to see the weight he carried. The lines around his eyes deepened each year. His back bent slightly more each year. Still, he never complained. When I asked him why he never bought anything for himself, he just said, "Fathers don't need much. Seeing you smile is enough." He was a simple man with extraordinary strength, and I took him for granted. When I became a teenager, life started to pull me away from him. I wanted to fit in, to chase things that glittered, to be like everyone else. My friends had expensive clothes, big houses, shiny phones. I had a father who worked with grease-stained hands and shoes that were years old. I started to feel embarrassed when he picked me up from school. I would walk a little ahead so no one would see him. Sometimes I even told him not to come. He never got angry. He just nodded and smiled that tired smile that somehow made me feel worse. One day, he waited outside my classroom with a lunchbox because I had forgotten mine. I remember how his old jacket was stained with oil and his shoes were muddy from work. My friends laughed quietly behind me. I took the lunchbox from his hands and muttered, "You shouldn't have come." He looked at me for a long second, and then he said softly, "You didn't eat breakfast. I couldn't let you stay hungry." That night, I cried silently in my room. I didn't know then that small moments like that would haunt me years later, the quiet sacrifices, the unspoken love, the things I never said. Time moved faster than I realized. I went to college in another city, chasing dreams my father always encouraged, but secretly feared would take me away from him. He worked even harder to support me. Every month he sent money, never missing a payment, even when it meant skipping his own meals. Whenever I told him not to, he just said, "A father's hunger is nothing if it means his daughter's happiness." I came home less often. Calls became shorter. I was busy with studies, new friends, and a world that didn't know my father or his quiet heroism. Yet every time I did call, he answered with the same warmth, the same steady voice that asked, "Are you eating well? Are you happy?" He never asked if I missed him. Years passed and I graduated with honors. I got a job in the city, and for the first time, I was earning enough to make him proud. I remember the day I called him and said, "Dad, I'm coming home this weekend. I have a surprise for you." He chuckled softly. "You don't need to bring me anything, sweetheart. Just seeing you is enough." But I bought him a new watch, the kind he had always looked at but never bought for himself. He had worn the same old one for decades, its glass cracked, its strap nearly falling apart. I wanted to give him something beautiful, something that showed him how much I meant to him. When I reached home that weekend, he was sitting on the porch, waiting for me just like he used to when I was a little girl. But something was different. His face looked pale, his movements slower. He stood up to hug me, and for the first time, I felt how fragile he had become. We talked all evening. He asked about my job, my friends, my life. I told him everything except how guilty I felt for being away so long. That night, as I was about to go to sleep, I noticed the old watch still on his wrist. I smiled and said, "Dad, I got you something." I handed him the box, and when he opened it, his eyes softened. "A new watch?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "You've had that old one forever. I thought you deserved something new." He looked at the watch for a moment and then at me. "It's beautiful," he said, "but this old one still works fine. It's the watch your mother gave me the year you were born." I hadn't known that. My mother had died when I was just a baby. He smiled faintly and added, "Some things may be old, but they carry all the time we've lived through. That's worth more than new things." I didn't argue, I just nodded, and we sat in silence, listening to the ticking of that old watch. 2 weeks later, I got a call at work. It was from a neighbor. My father had collapsed in his shop. They said he had been overworking, skipping meals, ignoring the pain in his chest. By the time I reached the hospital, it was too late. He was gone. The world felt empty. I couldn't breathe. I kept thinking about the last time I saw him, about the words I didn't say, the hugs I didn't give. I would have given anything to hear his voice just once more. When they handed me his belongings, I saw the old watch still on his wrist. The glass was even more cracked now, the strap barely holding together. I held it against my chest and cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. At the funeral, people spoke about how kind and hardworking he was, but no one really knew how extraordinary he had been, not because of what he did, but because of how he loved. He loved without condition, without complaint, without expecting anything in return. After everything was over, I went home and sat on the porch where he used to sit. The world felt too quiet. The chair beside me was empty. I looked down at the watch in my hand and wound it gently. It began to tick again, slow and steady, just like his heartbeat once was. In that moment, I understood what he had meant all those years ago when he said, "Everything worth keeping needs care." He had cared for me, even when I didn't deserve it. He had loved me even when I turned away. Time moved on, but part of me stayed in that small house with him. Every morning before I leave for work, I wear his watch. It doesn't match my clothes, it doesn't shine like the new one I once bought him, but it feels like home. Every tick reminds me of his laughter, his voice, his endless patience. Sometimes late at night, I imagine him sitting beside me, smiling that tired smile. And I whisper, "Dad, I'm sorry, I see it all now. I see everything you were, everything you did." The years continue to pass and I grow older, but his memory never fades. His lessons live inside me. I finally understand that love doesn't need to be loud or perfect. It just needs to stay, quietly, through the years, like the steady ticking of an old watch.
And sometimes when the world feels too heavy and I want to give up, I hold that watch close and remember his voice saying, "Sweetheart, even when time stops for a moment, life doesn't." That was my father's final gift to me, the courage to keep living, to keep moving, even when it hurts. And so I do.